Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're taking a look at how a supposedly closed, heavily guarded murder case can be completely unraveled using literally nothing but deep focus and undeniable facts. We're getting into the incredible source material behind A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. We're going to see how shifting timelines, buried community secrets, and, get this, even microscopic digital footprints can completely rewrite the truth. We'll see exactly how one determined teenager manages to pry open a sealed puzzle box that an entire town desperately wanted buried forever. Let's get into it.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of this investigation, I want you to think about your own hometown, or, even just your current neighborhood. Think about that peaceful, quiet facade you see every single day. How much of that comfort actually relies on a silent, collective agreement among everyone living there to just not ask uncomfortable questions? Because Little Kilton, it looks flawless. Sun-drenched stone cottages, boys playing cricket on the village green, houses draped in heavy wisteria, it's picture perfect. But 5 years ago, that illusion of suburban safety was completely shattered by a profoundly jarring reality. Picture this contrast. On that pristine street, a 17-year-old girl named Andy Bell is stumbling toward the woods. She's wearing perfectly applied makeup and a pristine white crop top, but her eyes are glassy and there's a dark blood stain oozing down the back of her head. It's a terrifying image, and it directly sets up the massive, unresolved trauma this town has been hiding.
So, to maintain its collective comfort, the town buried that trauma under a very concrete, universally accepted narrative. The official story goes like this. 5 years ago, 18-year-old Sal Singh supposedly murdered his girlfriend Andy. He disposed of her body, which, by the way, has literally never been found. Then, just days later, Sal died by suicide in the woods after texting a confession to his dad. Case closed. The police moved on, the town moved on, and Sal became the super convenient scapegoat, absorbing all the town's sins. This is the reality Little Kilton has accepted as absolute fact.
But you've got to wonder, how did the police arrive at such a neat conclusion so quickly? Well, it actually comes down to a well-known psychological phenomenon, tunnel vision. Think about it. You have a missing, presumed dead girl, and a terrified community practically screaming for immediate answers. Then, conveniently, the boyfriend turns up dead with an apparent confession text on his phone. It places a neat little bow on a really, really messy tragedy. Human nature dictates that once a satisfactory answer is found to neutralize panic, the search for alternatives just stops. The police retrofitted ambiguous evidence to match their concrete conclusion, creating a textbook environment for confirmation bias. They just stopped looking.
Enter 17-year-old Pip Fitzamaby. Pip fundamentally disrupts the town's collective agreement. For her senior school project, her EPQ, she decides to investigate this notorious, totally forbidden tragedy. Now, you might be thinking, it's incredibly naive for a high schooler to try and outsmart trained detectives based on some sentimental memory of Sal being nice to her in the library once. But actually, her perceived naivete is her greatest investigative asset. She isn't burdened by the bureaucratic pressure to close a case, and she definitely doesn't share the rigid system's foundational assumptions. Working from a baseline of profound doubt, Pip acts as an active antagonist to the established narrative. She's essentially taking a butter knife to a puzzle box the whole town poured concrete over.
And this brilliantly illustrates the power of doing the math yourself. Pip knows theoretical doubt is useless without data. So she builds this massive murder board in her bedroom, cross-referencing old social media posts with police statements, and she finds a huge, gaping hole in the timeline. The official narrative claims Sal had no alibi. But wait, look at the timeline Pip maps out. Sal left his friend Max Hastings' house at 10:30 p.m., yet his brother Ravi didn't see him get home until 12:50 a.m. That is 2 hours and 20 minutes of unaccounted time. In forensic terms, that is an absolute eternity. That is the exact window where a typical Friday night transitions into a murder.
To figure out what actually happened in those 2 hours, Pip plays a high-stakes game of truth Jenga, interrogating the people who were with Sal that night. The environmental storytelling here is just incredible. First, she goes to Naomi Ward. Naomi is in a dark, chaotic bedroom, wearing a unicorn onesie with a blaring, distorted alarm clock, physically manifesting her anxiety. She's depressed, totally crushed by the cognitive load of a 5-year lie, and she yields almost immediately when Pip introduces basic logic. But then there's Max Hastings. Pip corners him at a lavish silver anniversary party while wearing a rigid, deeply humiliating chafing star costume as a caterer. Max retreats to a dark, subterranean wine cellar. He is predatory. He completely subverts Pip's authority by turning the interrogation into a drinking game, forcing her to take shots of alcohol to destabilize her and maintain dominance.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the absolute bombshell that drops once Pip absorbs the risk of Max's drinking game. She uses the fact that Naomi already broke as leverage, and Max, impaired by his own drinking and totally caught off guard, reveals the truth. He tells Pip, "We were Sal's alibi. He made us lie for him." Boom. With a single sentence, Pip pulls out a crucial Jenga block and the town's entire official story begins to wobble.
But you have to ask, why would Sal ask his friends to lie in the first place? This reveals the tragic paradox of the efficient innocent. See, the day after Andy vanished, Sal logically assumed she was just missing. Maybe she ran away. He didn't want the police wasting their initial critical search hours investigating him, the boyfriend. So trying to be super efficient and helpful, he manufactured a fake alibi to remove himself as a distraction. But when the situation escalated to suspected murder, his terrified friends panicked and retracted the lie. The police didn't see a kid who made a misguided logistical error. They saw a suspect whose alibi violently collapsed. They saw deceptive behavior, and that well-intentioned lie literally became the foundational proof of his guilt. By exposing this, Pip isn't just proving Sal's innocence, she's exposing the town's complicity. And let me tell you, communities do not like having their moral rot examined. The pushback is aggressive. At that same anniversary party, a creepy, dark-haired stranger in a suit corners an isolated, slightly intoxicated Pip. He infantilizes her, actually pretending to steal her nose like a toddler, while threatening her for being a nosy Parker, which is a highly calculated tactic to induce real paranoia. Then, Pip discovers her own best friend, Kara, knew about the retracted alibi all along but stayed quiet to protect her sister, Naomi. The sociological reality is stark here. A functioning community will aggressively defend a comfortable lie and violently protect its scapegoat, simply because the lie is easier to live with than a disruptive truth. Alienated and threatened, Pip realizes she can only trust the one person the town has completely ostracized, Sal's brother Ravi. At first, she approaches him awkwardly at a bus stop with vanilla and nutmeg muffins. Ravi instantly identifies the muffin ingredients, showing right away that he's highly observant, but he totally shuts her down, viewing her project as morbid true crime tourism. Pip realizes she's kinda acting like a white savior, treating his enduring nightmare as just an academic puzzle. It's only when she drops the pretense, shows up at his door still wearing that ridiculous star costume, and offers a profound, unreserved apology that things change. She shares her emotional vulnerability and her fundamental belief that Sal was a good person incapable of murder. That shared belief finally earns Robbie's trust. This alliance allows Pip access to Sal's bedroom, a haunting time capsule preserved for 5 years. Ravi boots up Sal's old phone to show her the final confession text to their dad. So the crucial point is this. Forensic linguistics tells us our digital footprint is as unique as a physical fingerprint. Look at Sal's actual baseline. Terrible spelling, an absolute absence of punctuation, aggressive shorthand like PZ, call everyone. Now compare that to the confession text. It was me, period. I did it, period. I'm so sorry, period. It is grammatically flawless. A killer might have the logistical cunning to stage a suicide, but under the extreme adrenaline of covering up a murder, maintaining the massive cognitive load required to perfectly mimic a teenager's terrible texting syntax, it's nearly impossible. The killer reverted to their own linguistic baseline.
That mismatched digital cadence is the definitive smoking gun. The dominoes fall fast from here. Step 1, Sal Singh did not write that text. Step 2, if he didn't write the confession, his suicide was staged by the real killer. Step 3, Sal Singh didn't kill Andy Bell. This means someone else murdered a 17-year-old girl, hunted down her innocent boyfriend, murdered him, staged it as a suicide, forged a flawless digital confession, and successfully manipulated the entire police force. It shifts this explainer's narrative from a historical academic inquiry into a terrifying, high-stakes reality. That highly calculating killer isn't a ghost. They are walking the wisteria-draped streets of Little Kilton right now.
As if that isn't terrifying enough, there is a haunting piece of the puzzle hiding in the past. We learn through a flashback to the day Andy disappeared that Pip actually carries a massive, secret guilt. 12-year-old Pip was at her school locker when she saw a terrified, crying Andy Bell put a frantic finger to her lips, begging for secrecy before hiding behind a heavy fire door. Moments later, a panicked, sweaty Sal ran up and asked young Pip if she'd seen Andy. Pip, just wanting to be helpful to the older boy she had a crush on, pointed directly at the fire door.
Imagine realizing that your innocent, helpful gesture might have inadvertently handed a terrified girl directly over to her killer. Or, equally horrifying, knowing you handed an innocent boy over to the person who was about to murder his girlfriend and coldly frame him for it. How would you sleep carrying that kind of guilt? That is a heavy, heavy burden. And it explains exactly why Pip is so relentlessly driven to unravel this perfect lie. It's a stark reminder that the next time you walk down a perfectly quiet suburban street, you might just want to question the official story. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next deep dive.